Tamra Judge explains fallout with fired RHOC star Alexis Bellino. Season 18 of The Real Housewives of Orange County ended weeks ago, but the drama continues. First, we learned that Alexis Bellino was fired after her dramatic return to the show, and Bravo fans popped their champagnes and celebrated the good news. However, that's not the only interesting development happening among the cast. Despite their tight friendship last season, the relationship between Alexis and Tamra Judge has taken a turn for the worse. Tamra explained their fallout during an episode of her podcast and affirmed that she's been a good friend to the 47-year-old. No one understood how the two even became friends after their years-long rivalry, with Tamra dubbing her Jesus Jugs during a heated altercation at the Season 7 reunion. Viewers believed that Tamra joined forces with the blonde beauty to take down Shannon Beater, but did she jump ship when that plan backfired? Rory OC's Tamra Judge talks about her fallout with Alexis Bellino. Tamra and her Tootsies in a Pod co-host, Teddy Mellencamp, discussed Alexis firing on an episode of their podcast. The RHOC star explained how and why things went left between herself, Alexis, and Heather Dubrow. Tamra and Heather were Team Alexis all season, but the duo blindsided her in the episode after the reunion when they visited Shannon's home to spill some tea about John Jansen. She was very upset about that, said Tamra, sharing that she spoke to Alexis on the phone after the episode aired. I said, listen, we were strictly told not to tell you. As for why Alexis was kept in the dark about the scene where the duo met with Shannon, well, that's obvious. Johnny J and Alexis seemed to have the press on speed dial. There would have been a big chance that they would have went to the press and got ahead of it, reasoned Tamra. Alexis questioned if her friendship with Tamra was real. During Alex's interview with Carlos King, she shared that she was friends with Jennifer Pedranti and Katie Janela. She also claimed to be working on rebuilding a friendship with Heather and Tamra after their betrayal. However, Tamra was already looking at Alexis sideways after a visit with her before the final episode aired. I went to her house to see how she was doing. We hung out for a little bit, and for some strange reason, she goes, "Are you my friend or my TV friend?" shared the RHOC star. Tamra said she told the mom of three she had already proven that by standing by her side despite the brutal backlash from viewers. I actually threw my own self under the bus and got ran over this season because I was friends with her, exclaimed Tamra. Tamra Judge sat down with a deep sigh, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug as she stared out at the ocean. The salty air seemed to settle her thoughts, but the topic she was about to tackle still stirred a cauldron of emotions in her. It had been years since Alexis Bellino's departure from The Real Housewives of Orange County, and yet the tension surrounding their fallout felt as fresh as the day it happened. In a rare and candid moment, Tamra was finally ready to explain the events that led to the rift and the lasting impact it had on their relationship, one that had begun in the most unlikely of ways. People think it was just about one fight, one moment, Tamra began, her voice steady, but laced with a sharpness that had become synonymous with her persona on the show. But it wasn't. It was a series of things, a slow burn that finally erupted into something neither of us could ignore. She leaned back, her eyes flicking toward the horizon as though searching for the right words. The years had passed, but the memories of Alexis's sudden rise to fame as the new, somewhat naive housewife had left a deep imprint on Tamra's mind. At first, there had been a sense of camaraderie between them. Tamra had always been the show's fiery, outspoken one, while Alexis had come in with her southern charm and a touch of naivety. It was easy to see why producers had paired them. Alexis was the innocent foil to Tamra's sharp edges. But as time went on, their differences became more than just plot points for the show. When Alexis first came on, I tried to be nice, Tamra continued, her eyes narrowing slightly. But it was clear from the start she wasn't who she pretended to be. She was always about appearances, about making sure everyone knew she was perfect, had the perfect family, the perfect life. I couldn't relate to that. Tamra's words were tinged with the bitterness that had followed their rivalry. It wasn't just about Alexis's attitude. It was the way she presented herself as superior to the other women on the show. While Tamra was known for her unapologetic attitude and willingness to confront conflict head-on, Alexis was more reserved, and her behavior often felt like a subtle form of condescension. The friction was palpable, but it was subtle enough that only the closest viewers would pick up on it. But it wasn't until the infamous trip to Mexico that things really started to unravel. The confrontation between the two women had been explosive, an eruption of years of built-up frustration. Tamra had always been the queen of calling out the behavior she didn't tolerate, and Alexis, in her eyes, had crossed a line with her passive-aggressive tendencies. It was during a heated exchange at the dinner table, when Alexis claimed to be above all the drama, that Tamra snapped. "I'll never forget that moment," Tamra said, her voice turning colder, when Alexis sat there and tried to act like she was above it all. We were all arguing, and she just sat there, acting like she was the only one who had it all together. It rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't just her being holier than thou. It was her pretending like she was better than everyone. The tension between them had reached its peak, and the fallout from that dinner was inevitable. While the other women often found themselves caught in the crossfire of Tamra's outbursts, this time the fight felt personal. Alexis, feeling attacked, went on the defensive, claiming that Tamra had been nothing but a bully. And from Alexis's perspective, that wasn't far from the truth. Tamra could be a force to be reckoned with, especially when she felt that someone was trying to manipulate the narrative. Honestly, I don't think Alexis ever understood why people didn't like her, Tamra explained. She just couldn't see past the image she created for herself. She thought being good and innocent was enough. But she didn't realize that people saw through the facade. The whole "I'm so perfect" thing, it didn't work. Tamra paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. She had been accused of being the villain on the show many times, but in this instance, she truly believed she was right. Alexis's departure from RHOC had been a complicated one, filled with mixed emotions. She had been let go, something that was tough for Tamra to swallow, but at the same time, it felt like a relief. The constant tension, the passive-aggressive jabs, those were things Tamra could finally leave behind. Or so she thought. When Alexis was fired, it was bittersweet for me, Tamra confessed. I didn't celebrate it or feel vindicated. In some ways, I felt sorry for her. She'd never been able to really be herself on that show. It was like she was always acting. And when you act for too long, eventually the truth catches up with you. Tamra's tone softened, as if a flicker of sympathy emerged for the woman who had once been her adversary. She had always been the more vocal of the two, but Alexis had a vulnerability hidden beneath her polished exterior that Tamra had come to recognize over time. It wasn't just about the drama, it was about survival. And Alexis, in her own way, had fought to survive just as fiercely as any of them. I think the real problem was that we were both playing the same game, Tamra concluded. We were both fighting for the same thing, our place in the spotlight. But in the end, it's the people who are real that last. The ones who can show up and be themselves. Alexis couldn't do that, and that's why she didn't make it. Her words hung in the air, a quiet truth. Tamra had never been one to shy away from a confrontation, but she wasn't heartless. Her explanation of the fallout with Alexis Bellino wasn't filled with vindictiveness or anger. It was a statement of fact, based on years of observation, frustration, and perhaps a touch of empathy. As the interview wrapped up, Tamra leaned back, her gaze still fixed on the ocean. The past was never far behind her, and as much as she had moved on from her time with Alexis, there would always be a piece of her that carried the lessons learned from their shared history.